I'm really tired of explaining shit to white folks. Even white people that I grew up with and, friends with and everything. Tired of explaining this shit to them. It's like they don't get it. They don't they don't want to get it. And the reason I say they don't want to get it is it's like, so my friend sends me this post of the what looked to be, the NFAC, or it might have just been some other faction of a black militia. And he's like, look at this, blah, 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 right? Because, all these, it's amazing how white people get alarmed when there's armed black people. But when there's armed white people, they're patriots. When it's armed black people, they're terrorists. And so we ended up having a discussion about it and going back and forth about it. And what really pisses me off, what really gets underneath my skin, I'm like, he's trying to throw up reverse racism and, trying to, this is what I hate about them, like trying to grab on, like, you remember that college professor that was like, kill all white babies or something like that. You know what I mean? So now they try to take that clip or that statement and then smear and apply it to everything. And I'm like, I'm not seeing where they're saying, any of that. I'm like, this is the response to people being sick and tired of being sick and tired. This is the response, to, things not changing and, the system of white supremacy just constantly shitting on people. I'm like, this is the response, and he wanted me to like kowtow and step and fetch and all that other stuff. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. Like, I'm not going to sit there and apologize or try to water down for you so that you feel comfortable. These black militants, doing their damn thing. I don't even know entirely, I haven't been following and, I watch the NFAC's videos from time to time, and all the mirror channels and everything else that they got up. I'm actually quite surprised that YouTube hasn't taken them down. But personally, I think, he's so scary to the system of white supremacy or a lot of white folks that they want to keep his ass up because they want to know what the hell he's saying, but, when it comes to, all these black militant groups and everything, I don't know what each and every one is on. I don't know what they about. I can relate to, their anger. I can relate to them, not taking shit anymore. And, honestly, like, I just, I don't care. I'm like, well, that's the response. What I mean? Motherfuckers go out here and burn down a building. I'm like, I don't care. That's the response. What I mean? Like, in other words, do I wish that there was a more, organized effort? Yeah, sure I do. But, the whole system is broken. I was talking to, I actually sent a clip that, I don't know, it was some white liberal news channel on YouTube. And they basically talked about, cops being crooked and, this whole, what do you call that shit? The blue wall of silence. And I ran it by Captain Solo, and he confirmed that a cop that he knows said the same thing. And I ran it by another cop, and he basically confirmed and said the same thing. I mean, almost, not even basically, like damn near verbatim. Like basic. I don't know what they had some organization even in New Jersey with the New Jersey State Troopers. It was like the Skull and Bones or something like that. Skull and Bones, something like that. And it was like with the state troopers, and they were like bullying people and stuff like that. And you had a bunch of state troopers that ended up committing suicide. I don't know what that was about or the details of that, but I'm like, nah, it makes sense. You know what I mean? Because if the cops see anything messed up, if it's just not in their conscience, like what you saw with that when that old man got pushed to the ground, and you had that cop that for a split second, I'm talking about with the 75-year-old man who got pushed down to the ground in Buffalo and cracked the back of his head on the ground. For a split second, you saw that cop's conscience, the guy who actually pushed him down, like, damn, I ain't really mean to push him that hard. But then you saw the other police officer quickly snatch him up, like, get in line, soldier, that type of shit. And, for a lot of the cops, I imagine the consciousness is there, but it's almost like Boiler Room or what's the other movie, The Firm. You get in there and they basically, they set you up and they're like, oh, this is what we're doing. You know, you go in there, you got this positive identity related to what you're doing and what your job is and everything, and you really believe in the purpose of the job. And then you come to find out that that's not actually what you're doing. And by the time, they tell you what it's really about, you're in way too deep, way too deep, and so, one of the things that the cop that I had talked to said is, exactly what they said in that that video, that news video where they, the cop was basically acknowledging, how shit really goes down. Where like number one thing that they'll do. So let's say you don't stay on code. They'll try to RoboCop your ass. You know what I'm saying? Like they will try to, and what I mean by try to RoboCop your ass, if you ever saw the first RoboCop when he went to the scene and, he got all shot up and everything else like that. Yeah, they'll try to RoboCop your ass, meaning they're not like, you'll call for backup and they won't show up. And so you in a crack house by yourself. You'll be asking for backup, you'll be talking and, whatever code they use, you're getting shot at, shots fired, and they'll just turn their radios off. Or come, in a non-expedient fashion and hope that your ass gets fucked up to try to teach your ass a lesson. Or you'll be punished and they'll, put you in the bad part of town or the town with the high rates of crime and the high shootings, or they'll have you, at a train station, in the dead of January when it's, freaking below negative something, and they'll have you standing there. Like, this is the type of shit that they do. I mean, you see, and so, this is part of the reason why a lot of people don't speak up. I wouldn't say entirely the reason, but a lot of the reason why people don't speak up. And I'm like, how do you fix that? I'm like, you look at it from that standpoint. You like, yeah, these people are motherfucking right to be out there in the streets tearing shit up. I was watching a video that Cap sent me by, the guy that does visual politics. And the video was about Hollywood and how basically they don't pay people. And I'm saying, I want you to think about how society runs around, especially from the conservative side. They run around, and I'm not a socialist or a Marxist or anything else like that, but we've been calling this out for a while. And black people bear the brunt of a lot of this negative shit before, other groups do a lot of times. But this whole, holding the carrot over your head and telling you, oh, well, it's all about, the sweet twinkle of white Jesus, and it's about hard work and personal responsibility. And here you got the people in Hollywood not trying to pay people. Basically what the visual politics dude was saying is that, like, example, they'll come through like a Hollywood, like, let's say you're an actor. They'll come through and they'll tell you, oh, we're going to give you 5% of the proceeds of this movie, right? So if the movie does like $1 billion or more, like 5%, that's good money, right? So, they'll say, oh, we'll give you 5% of the, the proceeds, the DVDs, all that other stuff and whatnot. But then what they do is they go off and they cook the books and then say that they didn't make a profit. That way they don't pay you. Like he was talking about the actor that played Darth Vader, the tall guy that played Darth Vader, and how he still hasn't been paid because, the studio is saying, well, we ain't make no money, right? Because on paper, they show a loss. And how do they do that? Basically, you have the main studio, and then you have all the other, I don't even know what you want to call it, all these other smaller companies that are owned by the main studio underneath the main studio. And then those companies will charge whatever they want. So, let's say the movie cost, I don't know, I'm just throwing out a random number, $10 million to make. They'll say that, like, example, the camera company that's owned by the main studio charged $20 million for, the cameras and the editing and all that other stuff. So already you're at a $10 million deficit when you're not really at a deficit because all you did was pay yourself. You see what I'm saying? Or you say, oh, wow, well, this money is owed to this other company that I also own. So basically, and they even had a quote from Sylvester Stallone in there where he was talking about, how he did all this stuff for the Rocky movies and did the choreography and the writing and everything else. And he doesn't even have 1% to pass on to his children. Now, I'm sure they worked something out, and now, his kids are good and whatnot, because of the legacy of Rocky Balboa. But I'm just saying, this is them screwing people out of stuff. And even when I try to tell, my white conservative friend that brought up all this stuff about the black militants and they just want to kill white babies and everything. I have been trying to point out to him for the longest time, because he came from a working class background, so he knows what it's like to be poor. But sometimes it's like he forgets. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, look, dude, it's not about hard work and personal responsibility. Smart people, people in power will conspire with each other to, make sure that they're good. And you see this in every organization. You see this at every level, in society. And that's just the reality of it. And there's one thing I can't get around him on, is because I've made this point to him that, everybody doesn't have the same capacity. And you do have people out here, despite the fact that they want to say, oh, I want to be respected as a human being, and I want to be, you need to respect, what I'm saying and everything else like that. Like, honestly, it just comes down to like, fuck what you're saying. The person that's talking about you need to respect me, they either don't have the power to be respected, or you have the situation where, they don't have the intelligence to really know what's going on. Like, the person can sit there and lie to their face, and then they'll go off and then through all their various channels and connections and networks to, high people and powerful people, or powerful people in high places, they can do things the back doorway. Like, example, cooking the books, telling somebody, oh, you're going to get 5% of this movie, or 10% of this movie. Like, basically it all started because there was an actor in the 60s. He got like 40% of a movie that like just blew up. And then the Hollywood executives like, yo, we're not doing that anymore. Like, why are we doing that when we can just go out here and get these people to sell their souls because they want to be actors and actresses so much? Why do that when we can just get them to do it because, acting is their passion. And this is how people who run with that, it's about passion and doing what you want to do as opposed to doing what you need to do as a means to an end. This is how they get caught up. This is how they get screwed over. Oh, it's your passion. And you see the same thing where now they've basically eliminated actors on television. Everything is a reality TV show. Those people are not being paid what actors will be paid to do the same thing to entertain us, because acting is an actual trade. But they're like, well, why do we pay these actors when we can take a whole bunch of teenagers, stick them in a house, tell them they can live here for free for 6 months, and all food and everything is paid for. All they got to do is sign waivers and basically let us film their what's going on and instigate shit. And hell, they might even be in on it. It's like, yeah, just pick a fight with Sandra and tell her that you fucked her boyfriend or something, and so we can have a cat fight on camera, and then cut and edit it a certain way so that you think certain situations are going down, and it turns into a real life drama. Like all those shows, As the World Turns, Bold and the Beautiful, what I'm saying, whether they're still on or not, like I'm pretty sure they're just dying. They're dying. My grandmother used to watch those shows, but I'm sure they're dying. Everything is reality show. Like you can get the same bullshit out of, Basketball Wives or Love and Hip Hop that you could out of As the World Turns, and they got to, pay all them Dolly Parton looking actresses and actors, looking like, what's his name? Looking like the dude from Knight Rider, or the dude from, who's that other guy with the mustache in the 80s that rode around in a freaking, a Pontiac, Trans Am, them looking motherfuckers with the tiny leather jacket, like that's all they had to do, and some cowboy boots and the big hair, white guy with the big hair, who I'm talking about. But I'm just saying, like, they don't have to pay them people no more. They get a bunch of college students, throw them in an apartment, say, hey, let us record you for 6 months or a couple of seasons, depending on how the shit does. And, they'll be doing that for about 3 or 4 years, and then all those people will go back into being nobodies. It may, with the exception of maybe like 1 or 2 that were actually, using it as a springboard into something else. But I mean, between the cops and and that whole, the blue wall of silence and all the gang shit they do. I mean, it's no different than any other gang. It's gang shit. You know what I mean? You don't stay on code, you suffer the consequences. We don't care what the rules, the regulations are, the law is, none of that stuff. You suffer the consequences. Basically what you saw with Jack Nicholson and A Few Good Men. You know what I'm saying? Like, he gave his whole speech, and at the end of the day, he was like, you damn right I did. You know what I mean? So because he thinks that he's above the law, like what they're trying to uphold is more important than what the actual law is. And once you get into a situation like that, I mean, anything can happen. Any shit, you could be found dead, and everybody in the organization is going to stay on code like, yeah, we didn't see anything. And that's how you get into these sort of big giant, super court cases and scandals when something leaks, like what we're seeing with the Ahmaud Arbery case, and why that case was just sat on for so long, and why all this information is coming out because, got Roddy up there snitching, you see. But I don't know what happened, between that and the police and the Hollywood, what I saw with the Hollywood situation, and then, talking to my friend about the whole, black militant thing. I'm like, look, man, at the end of the day, man, all this stuff about, you trying to paint it as racism, like this part that gets me about white folks. It's like you go in there and you fuck up a group of people. Okay, it's documented. We all know about it. You fuck up a group of people. And then when they respond, you sit there and you want to start the conversation from where they're responding, not what you did, or not what your people did, or you want to wipe the books clean, and say, oh well, that was in the past. I didn't do it. That was my ancestors. Even though technically speaking, we've benefited from it because we're the dominant members of society. Like, nah, we're just gonna wipe the books clean, and anything that you do to us now is, well, that has nothing to do with today. That was in the past, and these are the same people that 9/11 never forget, Pearl Harbor never forget. But when it comes to slavery, oh, black people, that was in the past. You need to forget about that. That was in the past. You weren't born a slave. What does that have to do with today? But yet they can't let go of, Pearl Harbor. They can't let go of 9/11. Hell, they can't even let go of the freaking, the Confederacy, which was, I want you to think about that. Colin Kaepernick needs to stand because he's disrespecting the troops. He's disrespecting America. He's disrespecting everything, right? But then these same people who sit there and they want to espouse what's being disrespected in America and red, white, and blue are some of the same people that sit there and say, you can't change history. How dare you tear down Confederate monuments? Oh, you mean the group of people that seceded from the Union and, basically fought against America, fought against the very nation that you're saying Colin Kaepernick needs to stand on, and he don't need to take a knee. And like I said, it's so funny now how, they basically want black people to go back to their silent protest when, they were losing their shit when black people were out there silently protesting. But now, it's oh, black people, they're tearing shit up in the streets and this, that, and the third and blah, blah, blah. Now they're going crazy. Now they wish that Colin Kaepernick and those type of protests came back. And then the other thing my white friend, came at me with, he was like, these people, you sound like you support the idea of them just showing up at white people's house or showing up at my house and just killing white people. I'm like, no, I don't support that. I'm like, that's not even what they're doing. And on top of that, if let's say they did show up at your house, I don't expect you to not protect your family. I don't expect you to not stand from your porch and get the dumping if people are surrounding your house. I don't condone that. But I'm saying something's got to give in the system, man. This idea that black people are just going to, we operate underneath this illusion of inclusion and operate underneath, the notion of equality and justice for all only in theory. I'm like, man, that's not going to happen, man. I'm like, that's not going to continue to happen. You know, all this blowing smoke up people's ass and, you know, pissing on people and telling them it's rain. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm like, that's not going to continue to happen, man. You know, eventually something is going to give, something is going to break. And if that means all black people out here getting wiped out and eradicated because we lose a race war, so motherfucking be it. You know what I'm saying? Eventually people get sick and tired of being sick and tired. And eventually they don't give a fuck. You know, and I had to tell them, I'm like, man, you running dangerously close to black people out here, you know, about to act like some damn Muslims and shit where they not afraid to die. You know, I'm over there listening to the NFAC, Jay, and you know, I'm like, yeah, this motherfucker, yeah, I'm like, once you get to the I don't give a fuck, I'm not afraid to die point, I'm like, you got a problem on your hands. I'm like, you need to correct this shit. You know what I mean? And again, man, these white folks ain't about to give up no fucking power. Power is taken, it's not given, and they're not about to do it. You know what I mean? They're gonna make concessions. They'll take down a couple of monuments, even though monuments haven't even really been taken down like that. But you know, they'll take down a couple of monuments. I'm talking about in the totality of all the monuments that have been taken down. They'll keep, you know, the Fox News and all that. They'll keep replaying like the 3 statues that have been taken down and try to make it seem like a statue is being taken down, you know, every day of the week. But that's not the case. You can go online and you can look up the actual number of, you know, Confederate, you know, statues. And it's like you see, this is how you know it's about whiteness. And it's not even about, what, you know, America and being, you know, America, red, white, and blue, because it's like you got monuments to the motherfuckers that lost. You know what I'm saying? Like, they lost the war. And yet, you know, what are those monuments? Well, I'll tell you what those monuments are for. Those monuments were to you know, again, make the white Southerners happy, to make them feel that, you know, they were being recognized. It's symbolic, and the taking down of those statues is also symbolic. Now, I'm not saying symbolism doesn't have a meaning. It most certainly does. You know, hell, I find it ironic that one of the symbols, you know, of white power has now, or excuse me, one of the symbols that came out of Africa has now become a symbol of white supremacy. You know, which is the obelisk that's in the Vatican that they stole out of Africa. Go look at that obelisk that's sitting in the middle of that courtyard in the Vatican. It's got hieroglyphs all over it. That's from Africa. That's not European, but yet it stands there. Or the Washington Monument, which is what? An obelisk. You know, so, you know, maybe there is something to what all the hoteps are talking about, because they sure as shit seem to be stealing a lot of, you know, African shit. Even when you go over and you look at the, go on Wikipedia and type in the what's it called? The Freemasons. They got that big Freemason building in Philadelphia. I don't know what the building is called. Okay, the Masonic building. They got an Egyptian room in that building. I mean, it's Egyptian as fuck. You got to see it. Now they try to make it white Egyptians, but it's Egyptian. If you go and you can find it right on Wikipedia. They got an Egyptian room in there. You know, they into all type of spooky shit, all type of, you know, eyes wide shut type of shit. You know, that goes back into the whole, you know, the Epstein and, you know, Jeffrey Epstein and all that shit and what they about to find out. Personally, I think when it comes to him, you know, he probably, you know, not just the molestation of children, but probably invited people over there to have sexual escapades. People, you know, a bunch of dignitaries, they cheating on their wives and all that other shit. And you know, he's got, you know, cameras all over the place. And so he invites them over. Oh, yeah, you know, those pussy ass some dignitaries. And then it's like, yo, I got you on tape. So you going to make this happen, Captain. You know, you going to, you know, make me a billionaire. You going to, you know, give me connections to this and, you know, all that stuff. And that's what he did. You know, and so now they got his sidekick, and now her life is in danger, because I don't think that Jeffrey Epstein died of natural causes. I believe that he was killed. You know, probably slipped him some cyanide pills or some shit like that. Who knows? Just like, what was his name who killed himself in Nazi Germany? Rommel, with the cyanide pills. I think it was Rommel. But anyway, I'm just saying, the people that are in power, I don't know what they're going to do. They want to control everything. They want to control the media. They want to shut down social media. They're pressuring social media to, you know, uh, you know, basically, shut shit down, silent shit. And people think it's good when these, like Jared Taylor's channel got shut down. They think it's good when these white supremacist channels get shut down, and, Red Ice got shut down. I don't particularly think that, like all that shit is suspect to me. So I'm like, like they try to make it seem like, oh, we're on the side of black people and we're on the side of justice. No, they're not. And first off, it's suspect to me when they silence the white extreme, right, but they let the black people keep talking. Again, I told you before that the white supremacy's best tool is the denial of its existence. They can't deny white supremacy's existence if they have white nationalists and white supremacists constantly running around espousing white supremacist views. You know what I mean? It would be like if the assimilationists in the black community and the coons were actually the super pro-black people, and they just wanted the pro-black people to shut up so that they could go and they could, kill the beast from within, which means that they need everybody to look like, black people are all passive and they're all on board. I don't know. It's just a tactic. I just have my conspiracy theories about it. The other thing, or I could look at it a different way, I don't like when they get silenced because, I'm like, if they get silenced, I'm like, it's only a matter of time before we get silenced. It's only a matter of time before, black people who talk pro-black talk get silenced. Oh, this is hate speech. I mean, we've already went through that before. I'm surprised that even my channel is around because, the shit that they would reach on and call hate speech was just ridiculous. You know what I mean? What's his name? Sej Hito or whatever. He got his channel back. They remonetized his channel. Now they out here, kissing black people's ass and whatnot. And I'm like, again, you can tear down all the statues that you want. They can let us speak our mind all we want. But when it comes to tangibles, that's what's not coming. Okay, when you want to talk about reparations for slavery, that's what they're not going to budge on. You see, they had trillions of dollars just magically appear out of nowhere. Most of it went to the corporations. Oh, they got reparations for corporations, but they don't got reparations for slavery, right? They got money put aside for the Asian businesses in the Asian community, but they don't got that cast aside for black people. You see, so, again, I don't know exactly what's going down, but I'm like, black people need to stop letting themselves get duped by symbolism and stop letting themselves get duped by, feel-goodery. And I see a lot of black people, a lot of emotional inner city black people that they get caught up like that. I'm like, man, ignore that. That's not that. Again, you need to stand firm in what we need. What black people need in the black community is access to capital, access to resources, right? Now, I don't give a fuck. If every black person got $1 million, you can keep your Confederate statues. I don't give a fuck. You can make your Confederate statue even bigger. I got $1 million. It reminds me of what Desmond Tutu said when he talked about Africa. He's like, the European came into Africa and came with the Bible and said, let us pray. And then we closed our eyes. And then when we opened our eyes, what did he say? He said, we had the land and they had the Bible. And then the white man came through and said, let us pray. And then when we closed our, and if that's where he derives his identity and he derives his energy, and I got to sit there and I got to focus on, his overall goal. Right? And I got to say, okay, is it more important for me to point out that the nigga ain't that melanated, even though he talking about melanin and Hotep and everything else like that, and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and whatnot, who is also a non-melanated man? Is it more important for me to point that out, or is it more important, to achieve the goal that all black people should be striving to achieve, which is to not be subject to, white supremacy and white domination? You see what I'm saying? I just don't need to be magical with it. I just need to, I'm just a straight shooter. I'm like, nah, it's about the fucking money. It's about the resources. This is what these motherfuckers are doing. This is what they've been doing. Again, I don't focus on what they allow us to have access to. They allow us to have access to spirituality. They allow us to have access to the Bible and the Quran and all these other holy books. If it was that goddamn powerful, they wouldn't give us access to it. If the Bible was where white supremacy derived its power, then why would they give us access to it? No, there's no power in it. What they deny us is access to capital and access to, weaponry. That's what they deny us access to. Deny us the ability to communicate with one another. They said slaves are not allowed to read. Slaves are not allowed to have weapons, right? Slaves are not allowed to, have wealth and be able to pass on wealth. These are the things that are important. The shit that they allow us to have access to is bullshit. Because there's no power that's going to be derived from that, because it's bullshit. They know it's bullshit, which is why they can have plenty of that. They can have all they want with that, because it's bullshit. It's what they deny you. It's not what they give you access to. So when I see black people running around being spiritual and everything else, to me, it's just a distraction. You know what I'm saying? China is damn near an atheist state. They done basically wiped out their ancient culture so that they could be number 2 in the world in terms of global economics. You see? And that's the uglier side of, the black community and getting people in check and whatnot. You know what I mean? Because when you're talking about, operating for the greater empowerment of the black community, you're going to have to kill rogue factions within your own community. You're going to have to suppress those rogue factions within your own community, which is exactly what China is doing. Fuck human rights. Fuck all that, all the ideas that, they're violating human rights and people's, civil rights and this, that, and the third. China don't operate like that. China's like, we trying to get from number 2 to number 1. We trying to be the world's number 1 global economy. You see? And when it comes to black people, I see a lot of us, we want to get out from underneath the system of white supremacy, but then we want to enter a situation of complete and total anarchy. And I'm like, you're not going to be able to operate on total anarchy and everybody being able to do whatever the fuck they want to do and all chiefs and no Indians. And you're dealing with groups that are highly organized and have vertical structures where the person at the bottom is not on the level of the person at the top. The person that has no skills is not on the par with the person that has the most skills, right? The person with no wealth is not on par with the person with all the wealth. But again, you got people who they want to tear the whole system down, tear down capitalism, tear it all down and everything else. That's not my goal. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to have black people have some parity with white folks in America within a capitalist system. I'm not trying to go out here, and that's part of the problem when we get into these conversations, because you got people who want complete anarchy. They on some like Antifa shit or borderline Antifa shit, and then you get other black people, that they're just like, hey, I just want to see more black people become upper middle class. I want to see, but then you get people that are like, well, who's going to be at the bottom? Like, if I'm still at the bottom, if I'm still in the hood, if I'm still in the ghetto, well, then fuck all this, because I'm not fighting just to have only 20% of us move up the ladder, and I get that too. I get that who has to be stuck at the bottom, and that's a struggle within the black community, because you get a lot of black people who believe that class should not exist within the black community, and we don't like to have that very nasty discussion, because we get, again, it's the same issue that Haiti had. How do you get an ex-slave to work for an ex-slave? How do you go from the wealthiest economy in the Western Hemisphere to the poorest economy in the Western Hemisphere? I'm saying, even if the European powers didn't blackball Haiti, who was going to trade with Haiti? I mean, excuse me, who was going to trade with Haiti? I just negated what I just said. It's not that, okay, even if the European powers said we're going to trade with Haiti, how do you get ex-slaves to work for ex-slaves? Who becomes the landowner and who becomes the land worker? How do you have a structure? They would have had to immediately go in. They would have had to immediately go into a system of communism or socialism, because unfortunately, as some people have pointed out, slavery was the great equalizer. Now, in America, we've been, 400 years out of slavery or whatever, but you still have people who look at it that way. You still have people who look at like any black person that is well to do or has, a great job or great career. Like, they look at it like, well, you just work for the white man, so you have no authority here, and that ends up becoming a problem. So I don't know what the answer is for that. I don't know how that gets solved, but too many of us, we say, oh well, we want equality for all, but then we want to ignore that class actually exists in the black community. And I totally get. I'm not gonna be the one that sits there and tells people and says, oh well, you. I'm not gonna be the one who sits there and tells people like, oh well, you should just accept your lot in life, and this is so that only us and the upper echelon are able to move forward and expand on our prosperity and our wealth. But we'll give you crumbs, and see the problem that's such a problem, with black liberation, because the world does operate on hierarchies, and our hierarchies have been destroyed. And so every time you try to establish a black hierarchy, people quickly will point it out as a system of oppression, or that you're imitating the dominant white society that we're trying to get away from. I mean, even women do this. Like when we talk about, the man being the head of the household and the woman, being, the support. Then there's a fight that ensues, in that conversation, because the women will look at, their dynamic of men being ahead and women being the quote unquote subordinate, as, a system of oppression. They'll look at it like it is nothing more than a microcosm of the system of white supremacy, where white men are at the top and blacks are at the bottom. And so, they look at it the same way: white men at the top, black men at the top, blacks at the bottom, black women at the bottom. And that's how they look at it, but, as I've pointed out in many of these conversations, that becomes a problem when you have black women who sit there and they lament over the fact that they're not put on pedestals and thirsted after and promoted and all that stuff like other races of women. That's where all of that becomes, an issue. It's like, you can't have both. How you gonna be the protected, the pedestalized, and then that's when you end up with the women who come in the room with all of the, Afrocentric, mystical earth mother goddess, original woman, the first mother of civilization, and you get into all that, where they try to use that to leverage their position and say that any other structure is an un-African structure. And again, as an African American man, even I've, argued, against that whole situation, because I'm like, okay, I get you on the whole, you don't like the structure to be, mirror that of the European community, but then they'll sit there and they'll say, well, we want you to mirror the responsibility of the European community, or white male responsibility, but not the white male hierarchy or power structure. So we want you to be, what I always say, take on the responsibility devoid of leadership. And so this is how we end up struggling as black people, where, everywhere we look, every time we see structure, we see oppression. And that ends up being a problem. Even Grandmaster Jay, is that what he calls himself? Even he said that in the recent video that I was watching that he did, where he's talking about, young boys and him joining the NFAC and them being impatient and them not understanding structure and not being disciplined. And see, these things are a problem, because I'm saying, Grandmaster Jay is, he's a military man. Captain Solo is a military man. And what's so funny? There's three people that I can say that are some of the most militant black people that I know, most pro-black people I know. All of them are light-skinned black men. That's the crazy thing. A lot of these light-skinned black dudes are more pro-black and militant than seemingly the dark-skinned black dudes. And then not only that, a lot of the light-skinned black dudes are the ones mentoring dark-skinned black men on their pro-blackness. Now, as I pointed out before, I think a lot of that comes out of, as that woman said in Coming Out Biracial, them not being so black, allows them to really know how these other groups feel about black people. When they think that there's something else, or they think that, well, you're not black. So I can get real comfortable with you and say some sideways shit about black people and you're going to be cool with it. And they're not cool with it. And so, they, over time they hear enough and they're like, man, fuck that, fuck them. Like Cap pointed out to that guy when he was, when he was at GM and, some white guy was ripping on a black guy who was using magic shave because obviously, people who have very, 4C hair, black men that have 4C hair, they can't use a razor. And Cap, snapped at the dude and explained why he was using the magic shave because apparently the magic shave stinks. And Cap was like, he was like, yeah, he has to use that shit. He was like, well, why don't you have to use that shit? He was like, because I got too much of your blood in me. That's why. So, a lot of light-skinned dudes, man, they don't play that shit. A lot of, real talk, a lot of light-skinned men really should not be as disrespected as they are in the black community, especially coming from dark-skinned black women. I got to call them out on the shit. As much as they scream colorism, and light-skinned dudes is, especially from the older generation, because all the men that I'm talking about are over the age of 50 years old or close to it. So it's a different generation. I know people are going to come through and talk some other shit, but I'm just saying. I just find it interesting that, a lot of these hard in the paint brothers are light-skinned brethren and not our dark-skinned brother. It's like the dark-skinned dudes. And maybe in part because light-skinned dudes are kind of out. They know that they don't belong in the white community, and they know that they're not they're not necessarily fully embraced in the black community. And therefore they're not. Well, I shouldn't say therefore, but I'll say the white media doesn't target light-skinned men like it targets black men in terms of psychological warfare. You know what I mean? Whenever they want to highlight a black man with a white woman, they don't go and get a light-skinned dude. There's not enough contrast there. You see this in pornography. Whenever they want to show, black dicks, white chicks, black poles, white holes, they get the darkest niggas they can find. There's only one light-skinned dude in all of porn that I can think of, and he was the nigga with the crooked penis. That's the only nigga that I could think of. And I think he was like Dominican or something like that. If you notice, there's hardly any light-skinned dudes in porn, and porn is controlled by who? White men. You know what I'm saying? Or some people will jump up and they'll be like, oh, it's the J people. But you know what that means. But anyway, I'm just saying, notice, like, there's, whenever they want to talk about black men being spooky and scary and, the beast and all that other stuff, and they want to point and promote ideas of hypermasculinity, they do not use light-skinned men. So light-skinned men have to assert their masculinity, where dark-skinned men just kind of, well, I'm dark-skinned. It's just innate. And everybody assumes it, just like they assume dark-skinned, black male dark-skinned criminality. Light-skinned male criminality. There's like no such thing. There's really no such thing. This is, we see dark-skinned black men getting killed by police. We don't see too many light-skinned black men getting killed by police. Not to say that there hasn't. That brother that was I don't know what stupid shit he was doing, but the one that was running away from police, he was speeding and he got out the car. He had green eyes and he was light-skinned. But I'm saying as a rule, it's dark-skinned black men that we see. Arguably, people will say, well, there's more dark-skinned black men. Okay, true, fine. But I'm just saying, I do think that ends up, playing a role with the way that light-skinned men respond to the world based on how the world responds to them, and also what you see exhibited by black men's behaviors in terms of how the world responds to dark-skinned black men's behaviors, where there's this like love-hate relationship, and it really should be considered a hate relationship. But it seems like a love-hate relationship because they let the dark-skinned black man get shine. They let him, be in the spotlight, be in the media. They throw women at him and, make him look like he's desirable when in reality the efforts is to get the man that is supposed to be the backbone of the race, to get him to basically not be the backbone of the race, to get him to, weaken his image and, show his thirst for non-black women and everything that's going to make black women feel some type of way. I mean, this is the slickest game of psychological warfare that I have ever seen. I don't think it gets any more sophisticated than what you see in the media. Just like that brother said, thanks to the Way TV, who put the link in my last video, and it's the pinned comment of my last video. That brother went on Roland Martin and said point blank, he was like, they don't want heterosexual, heteronormative, cisgender black men, straight alpha male black men, on CNN. You got to be sweet in some way. You got to be disarming. You got to be feminine in some way. They don't want you up there with your Shannon Sharp, dark-skinned hypermasculinity, who's up there unapologetically, speaking on behalf of the black community from a position of authority. I was like, ooh. I was like, ooh, tell it.
I'm on here, so let's just keep it 100. The first time I met with somebody at CNN to talk about being a political analyst, to talk about being a pundit, to talk about coming on to talk about political issues and criminal justice reform, the person told me we do not have any straight black men who come on our network. Bam! 100% is what they told me. And so then when I started looking through the people who they invite on, the people who talk, you'll notice there are very few alpha, assertive, straight black men who get to talk on CNN about political issues.
Well, maybe that's why in 2013 they wouldn't give me a new contract. Go ahead.
Let's keep it 100%.
Hold up. The person literally told you that.
If you keep it 100% crunchy, if you look at what you see, they love having catty black women. They love them snapping their necks and making sounds and all those other things to make viral clips. They love the black men that they have on to do the same, to be sassy and insulting. They had the one lady filing her fingernails and to make viral clips. What they do not want is anyone talking on behalf of the black community from a place of authority, from a place not of partisanship, not to say, well, Trump is the devil or Hillary is the devil or whatever else it is. They want those types of people who create the types of viral clips that they want. And because of that, you cannot consider that to be real news.
And here's the piece.
Tell it. No, they want you to go up there and, like he said, act just like the women. The women are not, as I've said before, women are not a threat to any fucking patriarchy. Okay? Women bitch for power. Men have to fight for power. And so, and when I say fight for power, I mean by bloodshed. Power is taken and is not given. So when you see the black women up there and they pandering to white zaddy and everything, yeah, white zaddy will give them some crumbs. White zaddy will give them a little bit. And then especially that's why, as I've said before, that's why you see all these black LGBT women that are up there, because they don't, as far as they're concerned, they don't need a man and they don't want a man. It's not a matter of they think that they don't need a man, but they want a man. They don't even want a man. You see. And so white supremacy, they go and what the heck is happening? So white supremacy goes and they go up there and, they start promoting, all this LGBT stuff and, and you're not being inclusive and you're a homophobe or you're a transphobic and all this other stuff. Right. And it's so funny because it's not funny. I shouldn't say it's funny, but I'm just talking about the irony of the whole situation. They refuse to show you an alpha black male, speaking from a position of authority on black issues in the black community on mainstream television. I've been noticed that. Okay. They'll show you the feminine black man. They'll show you the masculine, emasculating black woman. They'll show you the overweight, undesirable black woman. They'll show you the LGBT, feminist black woman, okay, or feminist black woman. But they don't want to show you, the black woman who can, dethrone the white woman in terms of her beauty and offset, that they don't want to show you the epitome of the ideal black union or orientation. They don't want to show you a strong masculine black man that's got his shit together and he's established, and a black woman who is, attractive and feminine, and knows her role as a woman, and wants to be and puts being a mother and a wife first before wanting to go out there and, be, an astronaut and be CEO executive and everything. And I'm not knocking that. I'm just saying, if you're going to really have a community, the men should be more ambitious than the women. But they keep pushing this idea that the women should be more ambitious than the men, and that there's this war going on between the genders, and black men have been running around with their foot on black women's neck. They've been pushing that idea. Meanwhile, again, as the way reiterated, and I have said many times, when it's constantly said that black men, they're in jail, they're all fucked up, they don't have a job, they don't have any stability. Black women can't wear their hair like they want because black men aren't in the position to hire them. And then when we get into the gender discussions, the same arguments are made, about how they can't find men on their level and this, that, and the third. Right? I'm like, well, how do they got their foot on your neck? How are they preventing you from doing anything? It's already recognized that they can't prevent you from doing anything. That's what you say all the time. But yet they'll try to paint the picture that somehow black men have white male patriarchal power to stop and deny black women from having access or doing anything. I'm like, that's just patently false based on black women's own arguments. But again, the way that the media, will play things up, the media gives people these pseudo positions, makes them, when they want to, makes people look like they're more powerful than they actually are, makes people look like they're weaker than they actually are, and that's what they do. And so, black people who take their cues from the media, we then come to the table with our arguments based on a lot of what we see in the media, not all of what we see in the media, but a lot of what we see in the media, as opposed to actual, what the numbers are on the ground level in the community. Because, I mean, seriously speaking, who's running around, tallying up the numbers outside of white media and white institutions? I mean, this is the problem with us not even having our own institutions and, having our own, doing our own due diligence when it comes to our own problems and what the actual numbers are. We need our own census. You know what I'm saying? Because, I've heard people argue that the black population is much bigger than it actually is. But what white people want to do is they want to suppress the black population and make us think that our numbers are much lower than they actually are. So that way we have the mindset of keep considering ourselves to be these, minorities. Maybe our population is much greater than it is. But again, where do we get the information on population? We get it from white institutions, you see. So there might be something that out there, then some information that would change the narrative if we actually had it. But they're going to make sure that we don't have it because they control all of the media outlets and we don't. Like I said, we need to control our own media. And I mean, some of the black people who are in the highest positions with the most wealth need to be the ones to spearhead that. But they, like I said, they've all been compromised. They're compromised. They got to answer the white zaddy. They're not going to answer. They're not going to do anything for black because they will be cut off, or they will be slandered, or they will be smeared. You know what I'm saying? Going back to the whole Jeffrey Epstein situation. You know what I mean? He had dirt on plenty of people, which is why he just mysteriously died, as soon as they get into the investigation, And don't get me wrong, I'm sure there's people within the government, within, society, there are white people who do truly do, who really do believe in, America being, what it stands for. But, they do have a battle to contend with, those that, want, what America is supposed to stand for to remain nothing more than an illusion, the illusion of inclusion, right? The illusion of upward mobility, the illusion that, all men are created equal, or all men and women are created equal in the eyes of the law, right? The illusion of it. They want to maintain the illusion, but when you actually get down into the nitty gritty, we know that that's not how. There's rules, and then there's rules, So anyway, I think I'm done with my stream of consciousness for today. But yeah, just some stuff to marinate on. I got other streams of consciousness. I just haven't taken the time to. It's more Second Amendment oriented and whatnot. But I just haven't taken the time to upload the video. But I think I'll upload this one because I think I like the way this one came out. Anyway, that's all I got to say. That's my video. SWP out.